And now I'd like to invite to the stage, man, ladies, thank you so much. I am super amped, and I have even further to go. Oh, man. I'd like to introduce now a true champion of women in technology and the movement to change the status quo. You may have seen her TED Talk about bridging the gender divide in technology. She's here to inspire us to be bold and be the change. This is Microsoft Corporate Vice President and Executive Sponsor of the WIT Network, Gavriella Schuster. Gavriella, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks, Meredith, for that great introduction. Happy International Women's Day to all of you. Thank you, Kate and Mary, for getting me to smile and breathe and energy up. I want to thank all of you for joining us today to make a commitment to be the change that we need and to choose to challenge. You know, I heard a wonderful quote today from Mala Yousafzai, who said, you never know who will stand with you unless you stand first. So take a stand. You know, it was almost 4 months ago that I took a stand and gave my TEDx talk where I shared my idea about how we can achieve gender equity in the technology industry. And I'm still getting messages about it from all of you. I talked about my experiences in a conference room about a year ago, sitting across from 4 men with 2 men to my left and 1 man to my right, where I'm the only woman in the room, and it is loud. Everyone is brainstorming on this topic, and I have something to say, but there's no lull in that conversation. It's intimidating to interrupt. Can you relate? But I raise my voice and I join the conversation. I share my insight on the topic. And I am met with absolute silence, as if I was wearing a less empowering version of Harry Potter's invisibility cloak. So then I tried again. This time I lowered my pitch and I spoke more slowly. And I first talked about my experience on the topic at hand and what brought me into the room. And then I shared my thoughts. The second time I was heard. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of being the only woman in the room with no allies. When I was writing my TED Talk, I knew that was something that millions of women around the world had experienced. And that was confirmed by hundreds of emails and messages that I have received since my talk. All of those messages have been inspiring, but at the same time, quite discouraging. One woman wrote to me, I've been that woman in the room who wasn't heard. I've been at that meeting when the male client replies to my question by speaking to my male colleague. Another woman said, I have worn that invisibility cloak that you're talking about for a long time. I used to think my time would come soon to take it off, but it never came. This is the reality that we're up against. I've had so many women come forward and say, I thought it was just me. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not you. It's the culture, it's society, it's systemic bias that we need to overcome to create the change we need. We need to take a stand. I was just reading some new numbers from the National Center for Women in Technology. Women make up 47% of all employed adults in the US. But as of 2019, they hold only 27% of computing roles. Of the 27% of women working in tech, Asian women make up just 5%, while Black and Hispanic women even less. They account for 3% and 1% respectively. That is sad. That needs to change. We all need to take a stand to make that happen. All this despite the fact that the growth of STEM jobs has outpaced the growth of overall employment in the country, growing 79% since 1990. Despite national conversations about the lack of diversity in technology, women are disproportionately missing out on this boom. And it's about to get much worse because of the wave of digital transformation. 70% of all companies are transforming. Technology is becoming their lead. They are all becoming tech companies. And in their services and their operations, high tech is infused in every industry: retail, manufacturing, financial services, even agriculture. You see it when you go shopping, when you do your banking, when you reach for entertainment. You reach for technology first. And that in and of itself, well, that's not a bad thing. That's progress, right? But what is bad is that the jobs being displaced are disproportionately impacting women and people of color. And that is a trifecta of badness. By percentage, there are fewer women in technology, there are more jobs in technology, and there are more women being displaced by the technology. That's a crisis. We must act. This is not the workforce that you want for yourself, for your daughters, your mothers, your sisters, your wives. Trust me, I know. I've been here for the last 30 years. I thought by the time my daughter was ready to enter the workforce that things would be dramatically better for her. Well, my daughter's actually 21 years old now, almost 22. And in fact, things are worse. So we need to do something about this now. We need to change the status quo and change the culture that allows this bias to persist. It's going to take all of us coming together in a collaborative way to flip this narrative. We all have to choose to challenge the status quo. We all must take a stand. We've made some good progress. A few years ago, I was having a conversation with Christine Bongard and Gail Mercer-McKay about how we do something bigger globally to support women who feel alone in their respective organizations. How do we support women and provide them with greater opportunity? How do we enable them to thrive? We each committed to each other to become agents of change and formed the Women in Technology Network, which now supports more than 5,500 women in 53 countries around the world. I am so proud of the work that these women have done and what the WIT network has become. But we are still falling short, well short of the status quo change that we need to make. Around that same time, I was having coffee with a couple of other friends who, like me, were all too familiar with the struggles that women face in technology, particularly female founders. During that conversation, we agreed one of the biggest hurdles to gender equity is access. Access to business opportunities, access to leadership positions, access to venture capital funding. As you know, the door doesn't just swing open for women in technology. Historically, when we knock, no one answers. It was from that conversation that the Women in Cloud organization was born. Through both the WIT network and the Women in Cloud, we've been able to reach 20,000 women around the world. It's been a great start, and I am proud of the momentum that we've built together. But it is not enough. We need scale. We need to turn 20,000 into 8 million. Why 8 million? That's what it'll take for us to get to gender equity in high tech. We're only at 4 million now. We have to double the number of women in technology to get to gender equity. That's a monumental task, but not impossible. And it's why I developed what I call the Become framework. When I was preparing for my TED Talk, I thought I need something that is memorable and actionable, something that becomes a beacon for us to follow, something that helps all of us, not just the women, but the men, something that will help the men become allies, that will help the women become leaders, and that will help all of us stay on point in our mission to become agents of change, to disrupt the status quo, to choose to challenge the status quo. So I came up with 4 simple things that every one of us can do starting today. I want to take you through each of these actions and what they mean to me. I want you to think about what they might mean to you. And I want you to share some real life examples that are absolute proof we can make this happen. The first one is connect. This is about making intentional connections with women in your network, reaching out and giving women access to you and everyone in your network. If you're a man watching this, and I hope we have many, this is about you connecting into women's networks and giving women access to you and everyone in your network as an ally. I see a lot of examples of this weekly, but something that stands out to me every January is the feedback I get after speaking and attending the Women in Cloud Summit. I get emails and messages from women and men saying they thought they were doing a good job of connecting with other women and opening the doors for their network, but now they understand they need to do more. And here's something that's really encouraging. 3 years ago, the first ever Women in Cloud Summit, we were thrilled that we had about 500 people attend. This year, we had more than 2,600 leaders from 19 countries that were part of the summit. That's connection. I hope we have the same kind of connection today. The second action is outreach. This is about examining your recruiting practices, your hiring practices, and your supplier selection practices. When you post a job, do you screen out candidates or do you screen in for diversity? I wrote a LinkedIn article in January that's a perfect example of this. In 2016, the IT company Innovate was in financial trouble. And when they looked at what was going on, when their CEO, Thomas Asper, looked at what was going on, he discovered it wasn't a problem with their business model. It was a culture and gender equity problem. Only 20% of the company's workforce was women. So he made a commitment, and he got the entire leadership team and the board to make a commitment to change their approach to recruiting. Instead of hiring based solely on skills or expediency, they focused on hiring for quality. They put a premium on hiring a person rather than a number. The approach has doubled the number of women in the company. And I'm happy to say Innovate is now one of Microsoft's largest partners for Dynamics 365 in the whole of the United States. That's the impact of diversity in leadership in the actual outcomes that the organization can deliver. The next pillar and action is mentorship. I would not be where I am today without the many men and women who have mentored me along the way, that have shared with me the value of their successes and their failures, that have helped me avoid invisible tripwires and unwritten rules of business, and lifted me up when my confidence waned. When you mentor, you blaze a trail for others to follow, and you give back. In fact, one of my mentees, Isa Mendez, shared with me recently that our sessions changed her perspective dramatically. She was entering the workforce looking for a job in technology, and we connected through a Grace Hopper event. She was frustrated because she wasn't getting any offers. Everyone kept telling her she wasn't ready for the job she was applying to. I told her, don't listen to them. Listen to yourself. Believe in yourself. If you think you're ready, be bold and don't take no for an answer. She applied for an internship program with Microsoft. We helped her move to Redmond from Brazil, and she absolutely shined. When the internship was over, we hired her into a full-time role, and she has exceeded all of our expectations. She is an amazing woman. Isa recently shared with me that our mentoring sessions inspired her to launch her own mentoring circle for early career employees, specifically for women and minorities. That's giving back. That's blazing a trail. How cool is that? The fourth action you can take is to empower. There is nothing more impactful that you can do for another human being than to empower them, to help create an inclusive environment, to sponsor women, promote women, and give them a place in your organization to become leaders. According to the Boston Consulting Group, organizations with diverse leadership teams have 19% higher profitability. They have greater levels of employee engagement. They have higher levels of customer satisfaction. And really, it makes sense, right? Because a diverse leadership team is creating products and services that reflects the diversity of their customer base. I have an incredible example to share for this one about a Microsoft partner and a woman named Mary Thompson. Mary is a single mother with a background in IT. She was laid off last year because of the pandemic. She was out of work for 3 months and she was starting to get worried about paying her bills. Despite her hardships, Mary still made time to volunteer at the local women's shelter, where she talked to other women about how they could lift themselves out of poverty by taking classes in technology and learning new skills. Not long after, Mary was hired by a Microsoft partner, Bam Cloud, as a specialist in Dynamics 365. Not only did she land a job, but she joined a company that understands the value of empowering women. After learning about Mary's work with the women's shelter, Bam Cloud decided to supply the organization with free internet for a year and helped Mary to set up a technology boot camp for the women at the shelter to learn and grow. That is empowering. That is what empowerment is all about, right? And by the way, Bam Cloud is one of the partners Microsoft is highlighting this month in our Build for 2030 campaign, which highlights Microsoft partners whose technology solutions align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is a set of 17 initiatives focused on impacting the world for good by the year 2030. And this month, in honor of International Women's Day, we're specifically highlighting the technology solutions that have come from the women-led organizations in the Build for 2030 campaign. Those are 4 words and 4 actions that I want you to remember today. Connect, outreach, mentor, empower. I know many of you are already doing these things, but I want to ask you to amp it up. I want you to ask yourself, can I do more? Most of the time, the answer is yes. We all can, and we all need to. We need to become that force multiplier. It's through intentional actions like this that we can make a difference. We need to be the change. I urge each of you to consider, what commitment can you make? What are your intentional actions and commitments in the days, the weeks, and the months ahead? For the sake of your daughters, your mothers, your wives, your sisters, the time to act is now. We need each and every one of you to make a commitment to help a woman be seen, to help a woman be heard, and to make the invisible visible. So I'd like to ask you all to make a commitment today to become an agent of change and to help another woman take off her invisibility cloak and be an ally. Thank you. Back to you, Meredith.
Gavriella, I cannot tell you how much I enjoy listening to you speak about this. Your passion resonates. So I'm hoping we can take your energy and hand over to Winnie Fritz. Ladies, take off that invisibility cloak. Help others do the same thing. Have one, see one, be one. Love it. Love the statement.